Thank you. Yeah, this was a really fancy intro. This theme was actually given to me by Damon. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did making it, right? So um, let me just, yeah, it's working. So as I was already introduced, my name is Mariana and I'm a civil engineer, really passionate about tech, even though I don't have all the skills as Damon does, right? Um, this talk and this presentation will contain certain bias that is my view. Of course, you can check the data that that I'm sharing, but of course, this is my point of view, and I want to point out that I can only speak for myself and from my perspective and my personal experience, right? With that, with no further ado, let's go to today's agenda, right? So I will talk a little bit about Brazil geography, economy, and culture, about the construction sector, materials and methods that we have around here, technology and startups, and of course, challenges and opportunities. Um, with that, the first thing that I wanted to point out is that in Brazil, we actually speak Portuguese, and we actually spell Brazil with an S and not with a Z. So curious facts, right? Welcome to Brazil, and probably this is what you know us for. You know us about this amazing party, which is known as Carnival. But Brazil is such a big country that in fact we have different ways of celebrating this cultural party, right? We have a way of celebrating that on the north, on the south, on the southeast, right? On the northeast and on the central west. So this is what it looks like all over the country. On the top, you can see that it looks a little bit like Oktoberfest, and down you can see that it looks like a street party. You can even see that the costumes are different. So it's no surprise that actually our architecture is also pretty diverse. We have this cultural background that it's really mixed up. You can see that here also we have a Bavarian style, and down you can see something that resembles a little bit of Turkish, a little bit of Spanish and Portuguese. So overall in Brazil, you can see a lot of different references from all over the world, because this is a lot of what we are. So Brazil, in general terms, right, should be viewed as 27 separate entities, which are basically 26 states and one federal district, divided in 5 main regions that are linked by economic, social, and spatial ties. I'm actually from this area around here. You can see that there is a little symbol that resembles you to London, because it was actually a company from London that did the colonization back in my town, that it's named after London, which is Londrina, right? So this town was born in 1930, and we have German colony, we have Italian colony, we have Japanese colony, we have Portuguese colony, we have Spanish colony, and we have this blend, right? We have this amazing blend. Of course, we have Indians, and we have Afro, and we have everything. And that's basically what you can find all over Brazil. You can find all these different cultures and people that live in the same area and that are really culturally rich. And this is something that recently people find out that enhances companies' ability to become more creative and more innovative and more financial, and give more financial return. And that's something that we kind of always empirically knew in Brazil. In Brazil, we have something that it's really called as jeitinho, which would be kind of Brazilian neck, which is our creativity, right? Brazilian in general, all Brazilian people in general, they have this really peculiar way on solving problems. And this is so strong that it's even on dictionaries, and you have a lot of papers on the internet talking about that, because it's something really strong. And it comes from this really diverse background that we have, this big blend. Um, so this way of solving problems, you can find pretty much everywhere. So this is a house made of recycled material. This is actually in a slum, so no construction codes there, but you can see the way of solving problems. In this case was a housing problem, and this guy figured out a way of doing even his furniture out of this material that he could find easily on streets. This is known as our Gaudi, right? So his house, also in Islam, is made out of rocks. We have also new ways of solving problems. And this is a former construction worker that he went retired, and he simply decided to build a house upside down. And this is something that is really common in Brazil, this innovative way of solving problems. That's something that we currently do, and we do it by default, right? And that's something that I believe it's really unique. I've been to a lot of countries, not as much as probably many of you, but the ones that I've visited, I've never found a population that was so peculiar on those terms, right? And about Brazilian economy, we are one of the largest economies, and our economy basically has this really strong tie with construction. The construction industry is responsible for pretty much 10% of direct jobs. Of course, we have also indirect jobs that are also tied down to the construction industry, which means that the construction is a really strong economical factor in Brazil. When construction is doing good, our economy is also doing good, right? So here on the top, you can see Brazilian GDP. So you can see that as our GDP is going in good terms, our construction is also moving in pretty strong terms too. Of course, there is a lot of economic behind, and you have taxes and you have government, but in general terms, that's what you will see, right? So going further down on the construction sector, first, materials and methods. That's something that we should look into and take into consideration while looking at Brazil, is that we use mainly masonry, right? So we use bricks, concrete bricks, and regular bricks, ceramic bricks. We also use a lot of concrete walls, concrete structures. We really use it in small houses and big construction. We have new methods that we call new methods, like steel framing and wood framing, but they are not so popular. Light steel framing has been pretty much recently introduced, but not as much for housing, but much more for divisions in corporate buildings. But it's still being developed little by little. And that's because we were mainly colonized by Portuguese, right? And if you take a look at Portugal, that's what you will see. You will see basically brick everywhere, and that's our inheritance, right? So people in Brazil, when they look at light steel framing or wood framing walls, they don't consider them as safe as when you have what we call brick or stone constructions. So new methods that would probably be faster or more industrialized, even though they have, and they show sometimes more environmental friendly index, and they also have better performance. Sometimes they are not seen as, they are not so popular because of the final users and not so much because of the construction companies. So that's pretty much the scenario that we have here with materials and methods of construction. But with that, it's really important to say, because that's something that I was asked, right? You don't care about the carbon footprint that your buildings have. You don't care about the environment. And actually, Brazil in general, the government and also us as Brazilians, we are really concerned about the environment. So this is a statistic. Oh my God, this is so hard. Statistic that was made, considering the lands that are protected by each country in the world, and Brazil basically protects 30% of the whole country, forests and not deserts. So if you look into the protected areas of all the countries in the world, you will see that Brazil is the country that protects most areas, and also protects forests, areas that would have economical potential. We also make protection of those, even though it kind of harms our economy, because we really look into the environment, right? Both the government and our fellow inhabitants, right? So if you look at Brazil, this is pretty much areas that are out of the line. So you have 37% of Brazilian area that you are off limits. They are legally unavailable for you to do anything. So the government cannot build roads on it. If you buy a land on that area, you cannot do anything with it, and that's a lot, right? And that's how much we care about the environment. Also, we are the fourth country with biggest number on buildings that are certified. Of course, this is from 2015, but the numbers kind of follow up. We also have our local certifications, such as Aqua, Procel, and Casa Azul, which means blue house. They are really local, right? So they take into considerations some things that LEED doesn't look into, because LEED is more of a global standard, and those they look into peculiar things about Brazil. And when you take into consideration the authorizations and certifications that you must have to start building, they are pretty different from what you have around the world. So we have preliminary licenses, installation licenses, and operation licenses. And even on the primary licenses that we have in Brazil, you must have an environmental impact assessment. As I said, we really care about the environment. So you have to address how you're going to fix that if you are going to cause any harm, even though if it's on a city, right? So if you have to take down a tree, then you have to say why you're taking down the tree and what you're going to do about it and where you're going to restore it. If you're going to do outside the town, if you're going to do it inside the town, you need to say how you're going to solve that problem. You need to give really detailed information on the project for this primary license. It's off limits just saying, hey, I'm going to build this, and after I'm going to give you the drawings. No, you actually need to give really detailed information on how you're going to build it, if it will be according to the codes. So this primary license, it's not as simple to get, but it's really, really important to start this process. Then you have the construction license that will take into the preliminary license and a lot of different things. And then you have the operation license. So we have all these steps, and they all take into consideration if you have actually built what you say that you are going to build, and if you have addressed everything as you said. So as I said, we have a pretty diverse architecture. Those are 2 buildings in Sao Paulo. This one down, I don't remember where it is. But as you can see, we have from houses to corporate buildings that look like pretty much any other building in the rest of the world. And those are some examples of LEED certified buildings. And I think that it's pretty amazing that we can have so many different nuances on such a country, right? Going further on technologies and startups, probably this is one of unicorns that you know. This is called Quinto Andar, and it's a prop tech, so it's based on properties. They help you rent your place, and it's really, really interesting platform. But we have many others. So this is the general scenario that we have in Brazil for startups. This was made in the beginning of this year, and they tracked approximately 730 startups. And not all of them are included here. There are some startups that are not on this tracking that was made, which means that we have a really, really rich scenario of startups and also people interested on investing on those. So few interesting stuff that are happening in Brazil and that may get your eye. We have our first smart city already. It has basically slowed down. They had to start selling new pieces of land because there was such a huge interest on that. Also because of the area that it is. It's on the northeast of Brazil, really, really beautiful region. And they are making promises that it will be really secure with all the sensors. So it was a really, really big hit here. We also have modular construction as everywhere else in the world, right? This is a major trend, and we are not further on that also. So there is this company called Brasil ao Cubo, and when the COVID started, they basically delivered a hospital within 39 days. The deadline was 40, and they did the whole project and the whole construction in 39 days. It was an actual hospital. It was not a campaign hospital like you've seen a lot of different places. This was actually a hospital that was attending to all local codes, and they are really, really strict. So this was really something. And we also have 3D printing. As a matter of fact, last week, this was the first 3D printed house in Brazil with compliance to local norms in terms of material, right? So these guys, they are three owners and founders, one professor and 2 students. This was a startup that actually started into a university. They invested a total amount of $35,000. And they could build 4 printers. And today they say that they can cover any project that you ask them. If you ask them for 200 houses, they can build it. If you ask them for 300 houses, they can do that. It's just a matter of actually getting in touch with them. So right now they are looking for investors, and that's because they want to build a closed platform to operate the software. for the 3D printer, because this was actually made using SketchUp, right? They built in something on top of SketchUp to make the 3D printer work, and now they want to build their own software, and they also want to make a 5-story building. So that's why they're looking for investors right now. But up to this point, they made it all through their own pockets. And that's really, really something, right? This is also a really, really nice startup. It's called GeoX. GeoX partnered up with a company on Silicon Valley. And they developed this system that basically is a fusion of sensors, AI, and machine learning that basically can identify if people are using masks or they are not using masks and how they're behaving, and they can actually help on COVID, and they are actually from my region. So that was really, really nice. Also, we have another startup called, I don't remember their name, Omni Electronica, sorry. And this company, in less than 1 month after COVID started, they already had sensors and this smart building platform in which the owners are capable of identifying and knowing when there is COVID in the air or not. So they can know if the building or the room is safe or not, right? So this is really impressive also because it was just after 1 month after COVID exploded in Brazil. So COVID exploded in Brazil basically on March, which was when we had our first period of quarantine. And in April, we already had this system developed with also an interface. And of course, they already had clients. So this is also a really interesting startup that we have there. But of course, as any other country, we have a lot of challenges and opportunities. As you can see here, we have Brazil down there with the laggards, right? And us as a industry, we still look pretty bad, right, on terms of productivity. And that's due to a lot of factors, right? So Deloitte made a research on Brazil in the beginning of the year with big companies, but it was not a big number. It was just a small percentage of the companies. They made a mix between construction companies, manufacturers, and startups, and they asked them all how are their strategies, and kind of came up with a diagnosis of Brazil regarding innovation and open innovation, specifically strategy, right? So they asked if those companies were going to hackathons. And as you can see, only 21% of them were actually going to hackathons. They also asked about pilot programs on new technologies, and only 24% of the companies were having pilot programs. And acceleration programs, it was even worse, right? Only 9% of those companies had those. This is a major opportunity, of course, but also a big challenge because we have Brazil as a continental country. So if you take a look at Brazil, it was basically, I think, 2 times of the area of Europe. And if you have a hackathon there, it will be really hard to make everyone attend, right? And also, it will be really hard to market to all those people, and we have a lot of challenges on making that happen, right? But of course, that's a huge opportunity once you figured out a way of making it happen. And they went further down on making a diagnosis on what was happening between startups and companies, and looking deep and of course asking a lot of questions. They discovered that from this point of view of startups, the problem that we had on the productivity and lack of investment on innovation was basically lack of interest from leadership, the problem, of course, of the corporate culture, lack of flexibility, misaligned objectives and strategies, and lack of internal support, lack of internal resources to support startups. The companies, on the other hand, they said the problem was limited financial resources, lack of corporate culture focused on innovation, lack of dedicated innovation team, also problem on implementing new technologies, of course, due to the lack of an innovation team, and lack of innovation continuity programs. So the problem was that maybe they started technology, but it doesn't go on, right? Because they also don't have knowledge management program. And that's something that was also something that I discovered while running my podcast, right? In case you don't know, I run a podcast, and there I invite basically startups and companies and also self-employed people. And I ask them usually what they see as the main challenges of the Brazilian industry, and why do you think that happened? And the discussions, they regularly touch those points, the same points that you have here, and also some points that we will see right now, right? So this is a research done by a really close friend of mine. So Fabio, he made this research looking into the causes of low investment in technology and the consequences for the competitive advantage in the specific sector of incorporation, right? So what he noticed was that the main problem is the perception of value of the decision makers. He also point out on the conclusion, if you look into this research deeply, is that the problem is that the organization has a structure that it's really authoritarian, right? So it always goes back to the decision makers. There's no separate committee that has a separate budget that can take decision by themselves. That's the regular case, right? But there are some companies that are succeeding that have a different approach, but those are really, really, really rare. Anyway, he also see that the problem is a risk aversion, non-existence of a digital strategy, as well as numerous intrinsic barriers to the characteristics of the sector, right? So this is why we have this low investment and all these problems that were pointed out right here. That was something that was also really well observed by Daniel Hall. So Daniel Hall is from Stanford, actually. And on his research, he saw that the problem on the construction industry, and he said that in general terms, but we can also see that on Brazil specifically, is that we have this problem, right? That our structures, our innovation is mimicking our structure, right? So we have this problematic structure on the construction industry and on the construction companies, and that's why our innovation sometimes it's not penetrating well enough, and therefore we have problems on our productivity. It's all on how our organizations are actually organized, right? So this is something that it's pretty rich material that Daniel Hall published, and that is really, really related to this material that my friend created and this report made by Deloitte. So is that all, right? You're just saying you're just saying all that I already know. Wait, there's more, of course. something that it's not usually said, but I felt like I had to point out, is that something is missing, right? Of course, we are a really creative culture, and we have this really rich cultural background, but we still have more to do, and we still have more problems to fix. We need to have more diversity. And of course, that matters because, as we saw, innovation is really closely related to how much diversity you can find on companies or on sectors or on industries. And the construction industry, of course, you don't have this much of a gender diversity or ethnicity diversity. And the thing is, why you should concern is not because I'm a woman, right? Because I'm well employed. I don't have a problem with that. You should be concerned about this because you have higher innovation revenues and you have a bigger competitive advantage. So basically, if you want to have better results nowadays, that basically everyone have the same access to information and everyone has the same access to technologies, a way for you to earn more money or have better financial performance, of course, is to enhance your diversity rate. And that's what I wanted to point out, because even though, as I said, Brazil is a really culturally rich environment, we also need more diversity, as basically everyone else needs all over the world. So with that, you probably you're thinking in your head how we're going to do that. So as I said, you're going to do that once you figured out that this is actually how you will get more money. So once companies understand that the diversity can actually enhance and put more money into their pockets, they will start to think about it. So basically, showing these numbers is a start, right? And that's it for today's, folks. I just wanted to say that tomorrow belongs to those who hear it coming, and innovation is there, right? And I hope that you're having fun at the hackathon and blowing your minds every second of every day. And I'm free to answer all your questions, even though I think there are none. Damon, oh yeah, there is one.